We're trying to walk through a bit of a slideshow about what Divi is, which is the theming system. And then we're going to get into some practical exercises. I emailed everybody the password so they can get in, and the slideshow is going to not show the password, so you'll have to refer to your emails for the password, and then I'll proceed as if we've got a password and can log in and do stuff. So the session probably, I said 3 hours, but that feels a little long, so we'll probably get to a couple hours or less, and then we'll be done on this. But how it's going to work is we'll do the exercises, we'll break off and walk through the exercises, free-form questions as we go, and I'll also go over to the Elegant Themes marketplace. Elegant Themes makes Divi, and they'll have some support stuff, and I'll share out support links that'll help with the process of just getting going. So there, without further ado, this is about using Divi for speedy website building. Brought to you by Web321, the home of the all-night website. Web321 is building all their websites with Divi. And with that, we've got a speed process for spinning up a site built with Divi and getting it to a showable state pretty fast, and then from there doing specific development to make it something that's going to work for a client. So the overview on the themes. Super basics for the initiated. Divi is a theming framework for WordPress. WordPress is a content management or CMS. Content management systems manage content, functionality, and user access. WordPress is open source, which means it's free to download, modify, and redistribute. It is not necessarily turnkey, so while it's free to get, you still have to either gain the knowledge to install it or find somebody with the knowledge. WordPress has modular elements, chief of which the plugins that extend the functionality and the themes that create the look and feel of the website. So theme basics. Themes control the look of the site. They handle the styling with something called a cascade styling sheet, which is a set of instructions. Fonts, which is your font face, what type of font, whether it's kind of plain or very stylized or something else, and its sizing and color, thickness, that sort of stuff. And theming involves images and image choices. Themes control the layout about what blocks of content go where. And themes can come with special functionality specific to the theme that allow the theme to do more than just a basic WordPress theme. Divi is an excellent example of that, as they have a lot of add-ons and goodies. Divi, yeah, go ahead.
If you guys have any questions, feel free to.
Yeah, throw the question. So what is Divi? Divi is a theming system from the company Elegant Themes. It has 2 licensing models. There's single use, which you buy it, it's for one site per year, on a renewing contract, and a developer one, which is one we have, which allows us to do unlimited sites as long as they're all our sites, or ours as in our clients. And in case this is being shared out independently later, there's Elegant Themes, which is a link over to Elegant Themes. So what can Divi do? Let's just show up a couple examples here. This is an example of Divi from a bare bones site. So it's got sliders, it's got swoopy elements, so other stuff. You can put stuff down here, lots of styling, all that sort of jazz. Salish weave, another good example. This one's also done with Divi, a baseline version of Divi. And on top of that, we put a lot of stuff in here to make these elements both show off from a programmatic standpoint and style. So they've got the framing, shading, all that sort of jazz. And third example, this one had a ton going on. So this one had a lot of work happening, a lot of stuff in here that changes the look, a lot of stuff going on. This ties into HubSpot, lots of complexity, lots of styling happens. So that was a good example of scratch build, and kind of an extreme example of a scratch build. We've got other ones. Now, Divi comes with something called a layout pack. And a layout pack is a pre-built layout where they've come up with all the styling and instructions and ideas for you. And with this, there are some pre-built layout examples we've done. This is the one Aaron was working on last night. So this one started off with a layout pack, and then Aaron took a lot to...
Ellie helped.
And Ellie helped to make this do a lot of cool new stuff. It's got graphics, integrating Google Maps as an embed. All that sort of stuff. So, what can Divi do? Divi has a concept called child themes, and the important thing about child themes is every theme that you buy comes from a publisher, and periodically the publishers may update their theme. And when they update their theme, you're left with a theme that is great and follows the rules from the publisher. But if you've made any changes to the code, then that gets wiped out in favor of the new update from the publisher. So you can get around that by rolling out something called a child theme. And a child theme basically is, as the name implies, hooks on to the parent theme. So if the parent theme changes, the rules you've set up in the child theme that override the parent theme's decisions and coding remain. So your child theme can persist, and then your parent theme changes, and that means you can get new, fresh updates from a publisher, and it's safe to use because there might be security exploits or functionality problems or new features you want in the mix that you get by getting the new parent theme, but your child theme lets you keep your specific examples. Elegant Themes Marketplace. Let's go there for a sec. Elegant Themes Marketplace, they sell off themes. So they have Divi child themes here, and they have a whole slew of these themes that have different looks, different feels. They've got the feels. And so many in here. So like Delicioso, if you wanted a pizza website. So these parent themes, for example, if we wanted to go with a pizza theme, we could have used this one. It would cost $12 to buy. Nice things is unlimited website usage, so you can buy it once, install it everywhere. Lifetime updates, so every time they have an update, they'll push it to you. But again, that's a parent theme. And that's the thing, you have child of child themes. So you could have a child theme of this child theme, and the child of the child, the grandchild, is the one where you've made your specific changes, but it all holds together and works okay.
Grandchildren.
You can have great-grandchildren, but probably your system may seize up. Okay, so themes. When it comes to themes, there are basically 4 ways or 3.5 ways to go with this. The way I used to do it back in the old days is you do a scratch build of a WordPress theme. So you start with a blank page and absolutely no code, and then you start to build it out. You put in all the code that makes the theme show off on the front end. It's a really long, expensive, and painful exercise, and you break it, you bought it. Once you've got that code, you've got to support it on all of it for good. The approach that's a little less intense is a scratch build where you start with a blank Divi, like the Shawn, DeWolfe, and Carmana. Those are examples where they start from a blank Divi, then we add a child theme, and then we build the child theme out. Then the other way, which we just previously touched on, was you buy a theme or buy or use a layout. And layouts are something tacked into any theme. If you buy a theme, then you can just roll it and you're good to go. The downside of that one is clients will always want something to look like their thing, which means that there's always a bit of work involved in making it look like their thing. So while that approach in theory is okay, it never practically works. So you always have to go for option here, the last option, which is a theme that gets you close, and then you modify to get it right. And the core of what we're talking about today is the work where you modify it to get it right. So using the development setup. So building a website the Web 3.2.1 way. So our process overall in the company is when we sign a client, we get the information on what they want for the look and feel and the functionality of the site. And then our crack team of engineers set up the development version of the site. They're not on crack. We are crack team. We start by building a dev space. Usually our dev space is a subdomain at projectsdc.com. And then we start with a blank setup install. and we've got an expedited process that I'll talk about in a separate video and lesson plan for how that one works. But basically, once it sets up, it ends up giving you WordPress all configured with some default logins, all the plugins configured, and Divi. So now we're going to get into the fun stuff. We're going to go into DevSpace. Yesterday I emailed everyone with the DevSpace link, and that'll show off the front of the site. The login is right now Shawn at web321.co. If you add wp-login.php to that website I shared, then we can go in. All right, so when you get in here in the basics, scroll down to appearance as your first stop. Windows. All the fun with Windows. Okay, so down here we'll go into the appearance. As it shows off, it's got Divi update now. Now here's a little technicality: is don't automatically do an update in Divi. Sometimes Divi will push versions that are not entirely stable, so I always don't wholly trust them. On Facebook, there's a Divi theme users group, and people will carp about, oh, the install doesn't work, this isn't good.
Wait for other people to install it and find out it's broken.
Yeah,
and then if nobody says it's broken, then install it.
Yeah, when you encounter a minefield,
let somebody else go first.
Yeah, be gracious and let someone else go first. So they'll find issues, and then there'll be a quick patch. You'll see like 4.6 is out, and they'll talk about the features of 4.6, and then 4.6 won't work. And then a week later, go 4.6.1 is out, and it means that 4.6.1 is the one that actually is the one that works. So just when it happens, don't go immediately. The caveat on that one to finesse it more is if there's a security update, even if there's a problem, you got to go. So that's the Divi theme here, and you click on theme details, and it says what's what. So see, 4.6.1's available. I'm at 4.4.7, so I could update it, but we're just going to pull out of there. Now, even though the theme's here and it doesn't say activate, and we're leaning on Divi, what's happening is the Divi code's being used, but active is there's only one active theme at a time. So that Divi theme there, although it's present and critical to what we're doing, it's technically not active. So over here, we've got custom theme, and this is the very blank custom theme, but it's the active one. And custom themes can start off with almost nothing inside of them. So that means that when you use it, it can start off with absolutely no rules and just lend everything from the parent theme. But then as it gets going, and it will have more. And
you can't use the custom child theme of Divi without Divi installed. It won't let
Yeah, it's going to look to Divi, so it won't work unless Divi is present. And likewise, it won't do anything if Divi is active. So you have to have Divi, not have it active, have your child theme, have it active. Yeah. Scrolling down a bit on the page, Divi adds this section here, which is theme options. And in here, there's a ton of stuff that controls stuff. You can use, this is your color palettes, some of the styling rules, whether you have a sidebar by default, left sidebar, right sidebar. Yeah, I know. It's there. It's there. You got to know it's there, and then you have to make sure you understand it and drive past it. Like shop category for WooCommerce. Often sites will have WooCommerce. Decide whether you have a left sidebar, right sidebar, or no sidebar. Google API key sometimes ties in for stuff. We'll get back to that in another lesson. Google Maps script is something I usually would have disabled, even though that Brickyard example had a map, because if you have a map, Google charges you for map API access, which will incur a fair amount of money. And then if you deactivate it and just use the Google Maps share and drop it in, then they don't charge you anything. And it actually works at least as well. So, Google Google Maps, unless you have a really compelling use to use Google Maps, never use Google Maps.
Well, do you understand what he means by that?
Yeah, let's pause on that. So, questions? So you use the embed that comes from Google. When you go to Google Maps.
Show them, go to Google Maps.
Go to Google Maps.
And you want to say,
Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut. Everyone likes Pizza Hut.
And there you go.
Share. And then here it's send a link so everyone can know where the pizza is. Or embed, and then you grab this code through copy HTML. And then that copy HTML is what you'd plunk into the website. So this works.
Which works totally fine.
Yeah, it works fine when it's plunked into the website. It does everything Google Maps does in that space. It just doesn't cost you any money. And free is rad.
Oh, shit.
Google Fonts. Now, while they're charging Google Maps, it's charging a lot. Google Fonts, they don't charge anything for. So there's that.
I always just leave all of this at the default.
Yeah, it's often left at the default. Google Icon, Twitter, Google Plus. This kind of says something about their vintage and that they're not woke to whether or not Google Plus should be there. So they have those as options, as well as Instagram, which I think by default we just switched on. These will show off at the bottom of the website. Like, for example, if you look at the bottom of this website, there, the Instagram logo is available. So when you click those in the settings, it populates it here. But that isn't super important because the theme usually will override that stuff anyways. So it's not super critical that you do anything with that. Again, Aaron said just leave it as is.
Yeah.
Now, continuing on the leave it as is, but here's what you do when you use it. These you would populate out with your social media touch points. Like, for example, we'd put in, and it doesn't infer the profile, it just needs the whole URL. So that both means you put in the URLs, you're going to find it for the front page of what you're trying to go to. But if you had a welcome page or a pinned post or something cool, you can just put that in instead of here, so you don't go to the front of that social media touch point. You go to the specific part of that social media
Or you could
piece
even
you
put
want.
a Rick Astley YouTube video.
You could put a Rick Astley video there.
This is my Instagram.
Exactly.
Sucker.
This is tying into WooCommerce, so it asks how many products you want to display by default.
WooCommerce is an e-commerce.
WooCommerce is the e-commerce product that is the main e-commerce choice for WordPress. And WooCommerce will come up again and again because people are using websites to sell, so it's a natural fit that people will talk about how WooCommerce fits with their website. These are number of posts and other sort of defaults and settings. What happens here is to say number of posts per page, 5. Well, if you have more than 5 results, you'll have pagination at the bottom. Date format, you can mess with this. There is a helper over here. It's because there's so many ways to use formatting that there is so many formats. Oh, and they moved it. So down here you'll see a huge number of, like, for example, full day of the week. J is day of the month, lowercase. F is full name of the month. There's a long list here. Now, the cool thing about this is you can just mix and match these and then put in other strings, commas, dashes, etc. Or you can just leave it. But, for example, this one gives you kind of a set one, right, where it talks about the hour, the minute in 2-digit references, AM, PM. So J is because, yeah.
Good, thanks.
Okay, no, J is because there are so many abbreviations in the date format that they ran out of the ones that made sense. So day gets J. The day number gets J, and that's why. And F, uppercase, gets November as a fully written out word.
Month.
Is the fully written out month.
But M is the partially written out month.
But M is the
Right,
partially.
we're getting off track here.
Yeah, anyways. So the little helpers over here can potentially save your bacon as they'll give you more details. So when in doubt, if this video annoys you, just go over to the little icons on the right. They'll help you. They'll help you more than I ever could. Use excerpts from the define, so all these sort of settings. Now, down at the bottom here, there are, unfortunately, 3 different places to put in cascading style sheets or the styling instructions in WordPress, in Divi. And this gets a little frustrating if you're trying to be concise, because there's this spot that Divi allows you to put in rules that kind of make exceptions to the rules.
You might want to explain what cascading style
Yes,
sheets
cascading style sheets are something where they take a part of the page. If you look at HTML, you'll see that it has all these tags and strings that represent things. So like a table is represented by the word table. Body, which is the main body of the site, like let's just go here. It's going to look at the source of the page. So this is underneath the front of a website, the guts of it. You have HTML. This always wraps the top and bottom. What happens with, let me find a good example in here. Okay, so zooming down here, if you look at this, div is for division or divide, like a little region on the site. And it has the open character, div, close character. Stuff will happen in the middle. And then the div that opens will be denoted on the far side by a slash div that says you open it, you close it. So you kind of start it, but you finish it. Button goes to button. A lot of these phrases make sense. A is for anchor. We could go hours on the inner workings of HTML. But anyways, how this ties into formatting is when you look for these things like the HTML tag or the div or a, and again, we'll do a breakout topic on how cascading style sheets work. But basically, this lets you say, okay, I found the HTML in here and I want to mess with it. In this case, you say, I want to mess with the height of it and put in a height rule. The margin, I want to put a margin rule. Then inside of HTML, there's a body, so you want to mess with the body rule and put in styling instructions. And cascading style sheets are styling instructions. And inside of WordPress, there are 3 places to put it, which, like I said, is a little frustrating. At the bottom of the styling, you have it here. But if you go up to Appearance and Customize, there's a way to customize and put in also additional CSS.
So do you guys, well, I know you understand about the relation of CSS and HTML. Do you get that? Okay.
And then the third place is inside the theme itself, where there's other styling. So again, there's lots of places for it to go, which means that if you let that run away from you, you have 3 places that you have to dig for to make sense of it.
I just generally do it in the Divi theme options section to keep everything in one place, but sometimes there's stuff in the theme that's like overriding it, so you might have to go in and tweak it.
And this could be something you have to kick up to one of the crack team of engineers
Yes.
to work on.
Why isn't my CSS working?
Yeah, and sometimes CSS can be really stubborn and push in a rule no matter what, and you have to do a lot to get it to kind of, yield to your
like
will.
Putting important with an exclamation mark.
Yeah, which is something that is both critical to do and every developer says is a bad thing to do.
But
so
I
it's
do it
like,
all the time.
yeah, it's your way. Yeah, that's again part of the deep dive topic on CSS. When in the CSS the styling does work against you, there are ways to kind of get the last say on that. So yeah. The other part I want to cover off is something called the theme builder.
Yes, I do want this 3 pixels wide.
Yes, I really want it 3 pixels wide. Shut up. Okay, so back over to our walkthrough here. So that's what that looks like. We've covered that. Theme builder. Okay, so there is a much deeper dive on this we will get into at a later date, but in general, the theme builder lets you kind of have control over some of the usually hands-off elements of the site. And this allows you to effectively build a site that looks exactly like you want. Like sometimes WordPress themes will let you mess with the middle, but the top and bottom will be locked in. This lets you mess with everything. So how this works is you can add a global header which says the rules kick in everywhere for the top of the site and override what you're seeing. Global footer is the footer equivalent, where it just gives you a footer that you want it to look like, and the body shows off how the body is formatted. Now that's the default, but what it also does is you can add another template And this is where it gets really powerful in that you can pick out what sort of rules kick in and then show something alternative. So you say the home page gets different rules, or specific pages get different rules, or the children of specific pages. So if you have a company services page, then the company services page will look one way, but all the children of the company services page could look another way.
You could show kayak to show, because the home page has a different header than the rest of them.
Yeah.
I can't find the page that you're on.
Okay.
It is Divi at the very bottom, and then underneath
Oh,
that.
sorry.
And then theme builder.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, this is a good example of something Aaron built. This front page looks really good, but a lot of the stuff you'd expect to see in a kind of website aren't there. So you don't have your stuff up top because it doesn't serve the look and feel on the front page. You have to it just doesn't on the front.
The thing that's different about the front page is that there's a slideshow.
There's a slideshow and it's topmost.
It's holding crustaceans.
So then if you go to one of the other pages.
Yeah, so if you scroll down here, it's got all that stuff going on. But you go into one of the inner pages, and
It has a static header.
yeah, the header is static and it's less tall, so it's following its own rules. It's got a sidebar going on, but the footer is consistent for all of them, so you don't need to depart with the footer rules. You can let the default kick in. So that's the same thing over here. Oh, where is it? There. It says global footer, so if you don't specify a footer, it just sticks with the global until it gets a rule to override. And this is all about putting in overrides at work. So you can figure out what category or taxonomy or type of page or specific page. So you have one page that looks different than everything else for a good reason, and it can just have its own rules. You can also put in a general rule and then put in an exclusion, so you have an exception to the rules. So you can say all blogs except this blog. And then that's, so you can get all these layers and get very timey-wimey, but you don't, just only go so far in that. The other piece of that too, the other piece of that is once you got one of these going, you'll see this more and more in Divi, this little box with a sort of shadowed box underneath it. That's the duplicate function. And that one's really cool because once you have something completely set up, you can duplicate it and then you get a copy of it to mess with. So your starting point is something else. You can also duplicate a template. You can disable a template, which says you leave it around. You can export a template, which won't be in this section, won't be in this lesson, but it's something you can do where once you get it all right and you want to start using it somewhere else, you can export it, which means it actually comes to your desktop and can be fed into a wholly different site that carries over all the good rules and that really rocks. There's also stuff over here for portability. Same deal. You can export and import. And there's some revision controls, so you can see histories of stuff. And you can reset the template and scorch it, go back to start. This one here, just don't click that. Our crack team of engineers will have a conniption fit.
Is our crack team of engineers you?
Yes.
Our crack team engineers will cry.
They will. There will be sobbing involved.
It's an engineer from Team Fortress 2, and he will bat you with his wrench.
No.
Okay. So we cover. Oh, let me go back. All right. So next step is, and this is where we're getting some hands-on stuff for everyone. We want to go to Pages and add new. So everybody who's here, go to Pages on the sidebar. You see all pages and add new. Click on the add new. So WordPress, now there's a whole East Coast, West Coast thing going on with WordPress of the visual builder and the classic editor. This is the classic editor setup that it has the sidebar and it looks nice and you have nice little regions. And there's the visual builder, the new one, that looks a lot more like Medium or Squarespace and it's more white space and it just feels like I hate it. I hate it, but eventually classic editor, this thing's going the way of the dodo, so eventually I got to get on board. But in the meantime,
We're using Divi anyway.
We're using Divi. We're using Divi. So the two sets of bad options are ones we don't ever have to look at. So the biggie here is Divi Builder. So you click on that.
Clicked it.
And first thing it's going to do,
It's load.
it will load.
Rainbows.
Now, the thing is, when you're going off to the server to get this to happen, the server's getting taxed. So right now, everyone in the class is hitting the server at the same time, so it may be having just the tiniest seizure. Some ISPs fail historically and would not get out of this process if you had two people clicking it. All right, so we got the three options, the three little bears. Build from scratch, where you're starting with a completely blank set of rules and almost nothing. We'll get back to that. Choose a pre-made layout, clone existing page, where the page already exists, you can clone and use that as your start point. We're going to go with choose a pre-made layout. We're going to find something cool and mess with it as a way just to spin up an interesting page. So we click on that. And it's going to show you all the layout packs we currently have in here. Now, from here, you can start to filter. So you can go in here and go, I want a business. I want to be a captain of industry. And it shows the layouts that are available in here. It says there's 75 packs. A pack is a collection of layouts. And inside those 74 packs, there's 554 individual layouts. So this is the sort of preview mode. If you want the list mode, which doesn't give you a clue what's what, you can use that, but don't.
You can search by keywords.
You can search by keywords to filter it. So, for example, if I said, this is my chance to build that yoga website, well, there. I've clicked yoga.
Because you love yoga.
Because yoga is my passion. And then in here, it shows you the layouts that work for yoga. So, for example, I could say, I want a yoga landing page. So I click on that one, and it says live demo, so I could test out what it looks like. It's going to bring up a new window and give me an idea of what it would look like were I to use it. So it has all the assets, the graphics, the rules, the styling, everything. If I got this and then published it, I'd have this page, including having Jason Moran as one of my yoga people.
And his description is Lorem Ipsum.
He's my Lorem Ipsum buddy. So, anyways, I'm gonna use this layout. Now, I encourage you guys to use the layout you want, as opposed to necessarily the yoga layout. But me, like I said, burning passion for yoga, so I'm gonna have to use it.
Everybody pick whatever.
Pick a thing you like.
Do you want them to do a specific landing page or?
Yeah, do a landing page, because landing pages are a little more straightforward.
And it's taking 30 years.
All right, so the broad strokes, when you get to it, right, is the color coding, and the back end really helps you. There's a front end component we'll get to, but the back end is kind of clear because it's nice and schematic, so it's laid out in a way that you're not guessing whether you're one place or another place. The top is this purple, which is just your overarching thing. Then inside of there, you have sections, and there's multiple sections. You can make as many as you want, and they are denoted as being blue. And then inside there, you have this.
They can also be orange for a more complex.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
And then inside of a section, there are rows, and rows have something cool in that they have columns, and the columns allow you to set up how many columns. In this case, it's a 2-column layout. And then inside of the columns, there are modules, and modules are where the action happens. In this case, there's a text module and a button module, so they're giveaways about how that looks. And that text holds HTML, holds anything that's HTML or content, and a button is usually a little shortcut down to being just a clickable button, a clickable section.
Love those.
So you see purple's your outer layer. Then you have the sections, the rows, which have themselves columns. And then inside of each column, you have modules. The little plus buttons help you. When you click on that, you get a new one of whatever you're in. So if you're in the module, you click on that, you get a new module. Click on this, you get a new row. If you scroll down, in this case, you get a new section. So over here, now, as Aaron spoke of, when you click on a new section, you usually will get a new section, and that will have all the sort of rules. It will have a margin usually, and look a little more standard. Then you end up with full width. I'm skipping over, where full width is something that goes side to side on the page, like if you want a slider or something interesting. But it is full width, as the name implies. So it's supposed to use up all the width available on the page. Now, the middle one, you get a funky layout where you end up with combinations of rows and columns that wouldn't be easy to express otherwise. So you have like basically 2 columns, and inside the 2 columns you have one column that starts with a 2-column row and then 2 individual columns therein, and you get all these funky layouts. I believe there is a way to extend these out so you have more interesting layouts than just these options. But usually you can make it work with somehow being creative with any of those. So that's what that looks like. Now for columns inside of one of these, the other nice feature here is these look like they're static, and this is a UI thing I don't entirely love, but it is what it is. You click on this, and you can change it. So inside of, and then now in all of these, they're going to have these sections. They're going to have a little Cartesian arrow that says you can move this around. You're going to have the little gear that says get into the settings. You're going to have that 2 boxes thing going on, the box and the shadowed box, which says duplicate. Then you're going to have a save a section to library.
This is awesome. I love that feature.
And then the other one that don't click by accident, you delete the section. And then over here, there's some other helpers. So that's the overview, but let's just take through this a little slowly. So over here in the module, we're going to grab one of these, and you can go over that, and it says move module. So you do that, you drag it, you drop it, and it can end up somewhere else. Now, every one of these has rules and stuff inside the gear that's specific to them. So, for example, the text one looks like that, has these sort of things going on, which we'll do a dive into. But the button has different things. So they're all tailor-made for their own situation, for their own setup. They have different options. And if you're not sure what option you need, you could even search. You go, well, I need the label. Oh, admin label, and it shortcuts that. So it's nice to take that and make it a little less complex. Like, for example, over here you have CSS and classes and junk. So if you're in here, you go, where's the CSS? You can do that, and it would zoom you over to showing you a short version of what's what that matched that. So if you said CSS ID, there's nothing but CSS space ID, well, there it is. So then you can mess with it. So that's the cool thing about the gears, is they give you functionality and options specific to the thing you're in, a module, a row, or a section. Duplicate is just as the name implies. It takes exactly what you got, hit it, and it throws it directly below it in the same section. So now these two are clones. On the inner level, they'll have different sort of notation, like this will be something like section 1, this will be section, or button 1, button 2. But for all the look and feel and functionality, they're identical from each other. Save to library is really rad, and you can really get to use this a lot. What this does, you can say button save. And then you can decide to categorize it or not categorize it. So you can categorize it or create a new category, and you save it to library.
You should talk about global.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Okay.
All right, so I just saved that. Now, you can also do something in here. Save as a global item, so say global button. And when you make that a global item and you save it to the library, what happens is that now is, this one is global in that you change any one of this particular copy and all the copies show off different. So for example, if you had hours of business and you wanted the hours of business to be different, then what you want to do is you have this one thing, a module, you save it to the library, you make it global, and when you change the hours of business in one spot for that piece, it shows off everywhere, so it makes it consistent across the site. So you can create some consistency everywhere without having to go through all these places and fix. Now, you can also categorize stuff. And so that this doesn't become such a jumble, what happens here is, in this library, you're only going to see, when you're looking at modules, you're only going to see other modules. When you're in rows, you're only going to see other rows, sections, other sections. So when you save them to the library, you're not going to get too cluttered. You're just going to see those ones that fit. And then, so it makes it a little more concise. And then you give it a friendly name, and then that helps you later on when you want to come back and reuse it.
Divide them by categories, like this is all my buttons, this is all my...
Yeah, like a good example right now. So I just saved that, and I think if I'm right, you should be able to click add for the plus button and then go add from library. And so you guys go do this. You'll be able to see that the global button is probably available on your screen.
I see the global button.
Are you in the black add circle? Okay.
The insert module.
I see the global button.
All right. So theoretically.
I see it now.
All right.
I'm gonna put the global button in.
All right. So what happens is if you put the global button in and somebody here changes it, the most recent change is the one everyone's going to have. So you can mess with that and wreck it. But you can also mess with it and do great stuff.
Don't make the button stupid, Ray.
I'm gonna make the button stupid.
All right. So that's a piece of kind of the portability. And this is the thing about Divi that's really powerful. This has got a lot of portability. You can save stuff to libraries, so you have elements you can reuse. You can also get into a spot we'll get into later where you can save something and take it to an entirely different website and plunk it in and pick up where you left off with it. As long as it's another Divi website, you can put in that functionality. And that may be something we cover today or something in another section. Now down here, this thing, it's like, well, I suddenly hate it. So I'm going to hit delete. And it doesn't caution you. So be careful when you're trying to save forever or destroy forever, because the destroy forever is easy to come by. But the good people at Divi have the undo function.
Wow.
So you hit Control Z,
Oh,
and it comes back.
Yay.
so thankful it's not some stupid keystroke like Control MQ.
Also, there's editing history up here, and that will let you rewind, so you can use the rewind button to fix it. So,
What was that?
When you delete something, you can put it back with the undo, but when you go up to the top in the clock, editing history shows off
That was there.
shows off the work. So you can say, okay, whoa, I want that, I want to fix that. So you can redo or just leave something as is, but it traps what you're doing in here and lets you know all the changes. Pardon me. So let's see here. What else do I want to do? Oh, okay. Let's talk about this. The three dots. Here there be dragons. Let me use this one. All right. So in here you've got a lot of this stuff. So save to libraries is similar to that down arrow. Split test is something we're probably not going to use a lot of, but what split test does, it allows you to have two variants of the exact same thing, which means that some of them show off for one audience, some of them show off for another audience. A lot of marketers will use this as a testing piece, so they'll say, what works on this page?
What gets better conversion?
What gets better conversions? What do people seem to look at? And you can come back and monitor what the split test tells you and says, this is good or this is bad. Disable is kind of handy because this is responsive, and the site is responsive by giving you a great look for desktop, a great look for tablet, a great look for desktop, a great look for tablet, and a great look for mobile. But sometimes the only way to achieve the great look is not by saying that you're going to use styling to make it smaller, but just make design decisions about, we're going to hide this, we're going to show it, we're going to give you the alternative. So what this lets you do is it lets you disable some of these elements for some of these cases. So you say, well, that button doesn't work, so I am disabling it when we're on the desktop view, which means that it's not available when you look at the desktop view, but in tablet and mobile, you'll totally see it. Lock is kind of the opposite. It locks. It says no. You got to you got to turn off the lock to do anything with it. You can't delete it. You can't mess with it. Copy module. I haven't done a ton with this one because it just seems like it's duplicate, but it is what it is.
If you want to do it on two different pages you're working on, sometimes I'll copy it from one page and move it over to another.
Yeah. Well, over here you could then.
Yeah, I mean, you could also just get it from the library.
Just duplicate it. Yeah. So it's there. I don't use it that much. Now, copy module styles is really handy because if you have a whole bunch of text blocks and you have the formatting, you have the color, you have all the styling rules right, but you want to replicate them in the complicated on the other ones, you use copy styles, which picks it up from the module you're in, and then you go over to the other one, and you then paste and apply those rules somewhere else. So
only if you've copied it.
Yeah, you have to so for example, let's go over here. We're going to copy the module styles and then go down to this text box and paste the module styles. So now this box's styling got adopted by this box. So the two, when you look at in the front end, will look the same now, follow the same rules. Now that goes really far. So if you have a background image and some other stuff that you don't intend to carry through, the copy grabs everything, so it will carry everything through. So if you have like sometimes a trick I'll do is I'll have like a background image that says like the number 1 on it, and then the next region over will have a background image that says number 2, and the rest of the styling I like to be identical, but that 1 and 2 are specific to each one of them. The copy won't serve you because you'll end up with the first one you copy ending up in the pasted one. So it's 1. Yeah, so it's not that awesome. Reset style. Now all these, when they come out with a default when you load the page. Reset module style says snap it back to its default from when you loaded the page. Paste module, well, that thing where we copied the module a moment ago, it retains it, lets you paste it. And then you can just keep doing that all day long. You can also view modified styles, which shows you kind of what's been changed up from the default. Let's see here. Extend text styles I haven't done a ton with, so you can experiment.
It basically extends the style through the whole page.
Yeah, it extends the style, so it makes the style consistent everywhere. You can then change the default, so if you have it, you're starting to go, well, 15-point font is right. It seems like it's going to be what I'm going to need everywhere. Then where there is no overriding new rule, styles default says everywhere where you don't have a specific override, you have that new thing you said is the default that comes from that one region, that one module you're pulling from.
But it's only for that specific type of module, right?
Yeah. So all the text ones pick up all the text rules. And that one's okay, but I think it's something that's comparatively tricky, so I don't do much with it. It's not that doesn't benefit me all that much. So that's what modules look like. Oh, now here's the cool thing. And modules are extensible, so this list is here, but it gets longer. What you do when you click module, and this is the important stuff in here, you have all these options you can add in. Audio is in a sound recording like a podcast, bar counters, which are fun. You can put in stuff about your blog or your post. You can put in little blurbs, which have little sort of captioning and quotes around them and stuff. Calls to action, which is sort of little sort of do it today thing.
And a button.
Yeah, it's like a button, but kind of a button on overdrive.
Button that makes press it.
Yeah, click counter, bar counter, they're kind of the same thing. They create a nice visual representation of something nice, and they'll sometimes do a little sort of pop effect, and it's really fun. Code is if you're putting in HTML code and you kind of want it to be just so and no second guessing by the system, you put in code.
And that's where your map.
Yeah, that's where you use that. You use that code, and then you drop in your Google Maps embed code, and you're there.
And then suddenly you have a map.
Yeah. Countdown timer, that's there to create a bit of false urgency. Contact form and email opt-in are here. In practicality, we're never going to use these because there are other things that do it better. Contact form is just so easy to spam and so hard to make it not get laden down in spam.
You can add
a CAPTCHA, but CAPTCHA just doesn't do much. It's a pretty weak function, but it's there. Email opt-in. Yeah, okay, I don't use it. Email opt-in, it's similar to a contact form, but it's specific to which provider you have, and then it ties into all these mail systems. So you can tie it in. Usually you then have to get the supporting stuff to make it work, but that allows an email opt-in. There's a lot.
So they can sign up to your mailing list on MailChimp right from your website.
Exactly.
MailChimp.
A gallery is usually a visual gallery of a collection of images, a single image. A login, which just puts up the login box. Map. We don't use, again, back to the embed thing. Menu. Inside of WordPress, there's a menu system. And the menu system over here, you can build out new menus. But once you have them, you can pull them in and use them over here. Number counter, similar to the bar and the other counters. Portfolio, kind of like the gallery, just a little more attractive. Post Navigator gives you a way to show off a list of posts. There's some meta stuff in here where a post slider is similar to a portfolio, but it shows posts instead of images. So it shows you the featured image for a piece, its headline, and some other stuff. It's
like latest news.
Yeah, it's fun. It's not super. In the Carmana example, I built my own instead of using theirs because this one was okay, but not awesome. Post title lets you grab the metadata for the page because there's metadata like page title, description, stuff like that, featured image, and then there is the stuff that shows off on the page, and post title lets you show off what it is. Search gives you a search box. Shop is kind of better done by other things, but it's kind of a tie into the e-commerce. Sidebar, so you can add a sidebar or have it exposed and show off. Your social media follows, again, done better by other things. Testimonials are nice because it will show off a bunch of testimonials that fit and put them out in a nice, attractive way. Tabs shows off a whole bunch of tabs where you can click through them, and you can do some fun stuff with that. What else we got here? We got video and video slider, which show off videos. And those are okay, but often the more interesting way to use those is as use a background function. And we'll get to backgrounds in a minute. Now, the one in here that I love and use so often is text. And text lets you just have an editor experience. Text. Now, there's a whole bunch of those modules, but the ones I keep going back to because your content comes out in text. And the common refrain you're going to see in a lot of these module areas is content, design, and advanced. Content is going to be the real core piece of options specific to a module. Design is going to be about styling and the rules that kind of fit it into the rest of the page. And then the last piece is advanced, where you're going to go in and do some funky stuff, but probably you won't do much just because it's complex enough that if you don't really have a handle on those pieces, they could just bite you. So advanced is there for you to be able to really tweak it, but probably it's not something we're going to commonly use. And
we use visibility.
Yeah, visibility is a factor. So anyways, it's there, but it's less commonly used. As you go down, content all the time, designs kind of advanced a little bit and rare. When you're inside the text editor, for instance, and all these sections, you can zip them up and zip them down for the sake of convenience. You can copy and reset stuff, which is kind of like your undo. Now, because of me, and I code a lot, it starts with me of text. And text is the kind of the HTML version of your page. So it's where you put in your styling stuff and your tags for italics, your tags for bolding and headings and all that sort of stuff. If you know HTML, that is okay. But most people, they just don't want to mess with that. So they use the visual, which gives you a WYSIWYG editor. And in the WYSIWYG editor, you can put in...
What does WYSIWYG mean, Shawn?
WYSIWYG is what you see is what you get. So in here, I put in some text, and I decided I can promote that to being a heading. For the sake of SEO moment here, search engine optimization moment. Usually, you never want to use a heading 1 because that's taken up by something else important on the page. But heading 2 are a great way to denote that this is important on the page. So you put that in, and then a line break would reset that, or a carriage return would reset that, and go, this is more. Now, you can highlight that, and then you can mess with that. So you can center it, right align, left align. You can use this, which creates a block quote, which insets it a bit. You can turn it into a bulleted list, a numbered list, italicized. You can mess with all the standard stuff you'd see in a text editor. You can turn it into a hyperlink. You can also toggle the toolbar to get more goodies. You can put in a table, which the cool kids in school hate.
Oh my God, there is
tables.
a text color drop down.
Oh,
And
I never knew about that. I was doing it all by HTML.
So you got.
everything purple.
You can also throw in buttons, boxes. There's little weird stuff like author bio. Like, I don't know, how obscure is it that you'd ever need an author bio just to roll into the middle of your post?
Tables if you want to kick it old school.
Yeah. Now, because this is WordPress and content management, you can go into Add Media and open up the media browser and add stuff. So, for example, if you thought this blog post about yoga totally needed a fresh crab on some fresh ice, it's there. And when you're in there, you can mess with the editing. So you can. I often hold down the shift to control sizing, so it goes consistently. And then you can change rules about where it shows off on the page.
Yoga crab.
You need the yoga crab. So the yoga crab is part of our life now.
Yoga crab.
Now the cool sneaky thing in here is a text region can be an entirely linkable region. So everything inside of this text module can actually link to something. So you could have a blah, 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 but it's actually supposed to be a call to action for something like a buy page or a more info page or something. And you have the button there, but maybe people are not, for whatever reason, they're not figuring out to click on the button. So if you put in a hyperlink here, then everything in that region becomes a hot zone that when you click on any of the text, including that crab. Face back. Yeah, Facebook's got... You don't want to know. But everything in that region then, when you click on it, takes you to our friends at the Empire Faceback. Background, you can put a background inside of here. So the easy one is you can put a color in. Now, because of how colors work nowadays, you can start with a color primer.
There's facedac.com and it's French.
And then you can affect the transparency. So that way, if you had layers of stuff going on, it doesn't have to be opaque. It can be partially transparent.
Can you make your text transparent?
You could make your text transparent and
That
styling.
would be stupid.
Yeah, that you could.
You must highlight to see.
You can do anything. You shouldn't do everything. Okay, and then you can do a background gradient if that other color you just didn't love. So you go, well, I want this one. And then, let's keep the horrible, horrible color scheme going.
Oh, yes.
I want, that one. So there, because what everyone's looking for these days.
Brown and
Is
magenta.
it brown?
It's brown to magenta. And then you can choose whether, you want a radial brown to magenta. And you want to do a top left. So now it's just next level beautiful.
That goes behind your text now.
That goes behind the text now. Now see, now I've ruined that text, so now I have to change this. And I now have to change the color.
To be black.
Yeah.
White, I think.
I forget where the text color thing
Oh,
is.
you gotta do the pull down. The next. You gotta add the next line that you just taught us. Toolbar toggle.
Toolbar toggle.
You just showed me it. There it is.
Still listening, but I've got something in my eyeball.
In your eyeball.
So, nothing more beautiful than light blue text on a brown to purple background with a crab.
I think Ray is crying because of your design decisions.
All right.
I'm crying because of my own as well. No, I have cat hair in my eye.
Now over here, if you thought you wanted even more, you could add a background image. Now the cool thing about this is all these rules stack. So you could have a background image along with that fantastic gradient.
Yeah, so if you made your gradient like semi-transparent, then you could put it in front of the background image and be all like...
Yeah, so you can have layers, right? So you can have it very subtle. So you can have almost like a hint of color. So you have like a full image and then a gradient in front of it that's mostly opaque. So that just would allow the hint of the background to show
I
off.
feel like if you were doing this on the front end, it'd be easier for them to see.
Well, maybe. We'll get there.
Okay.
And then the last part of this is video. So you can add videos, both the desktop view and the web view. You can come up with the dimensions. You can have it pause when people mouse over, pause when it's not in view, so it has that behavior. But then you can push a video up and you can have a really cool video playing. And it's just as easy as you click on that, you find your video or you upload your video, and then you're good to go. The extra cool part is, now sometimes videos are impractically large, so much so you cannot upload them into WordPress, but they can be somewhere on the web, whether they're in an Amazon S3 bucket or hidden somewhere in a static part of your website or hidden even on another website where the rules are more open and forgiving. So instead of importing it into your media, you can just reference it from that remote resource, and then it shows off in here.
I did not know that.
And when it's here, it pulls it every time. It acts as if it's good, and then you just swap that instead of using media. So I'm going to publish my yoga page Opus, and then I'm going to go into the front end. We're going to mess with it just a little bit. Okay, so I clicked publish. Publish commits it to saving, and this is probably another outside of Divi important piece. When you publish, after you publish, it's out there. It's on the web. You can't take it back. The web is forever. You hit update.
Throw it in the trash.
Yeah, you can update it to make it even more
Horrible.
Yeah, a new version of indelible. It keeps track of revisions over here. And in revisions, it shows off what you've done. So it goes
Where was that?
over in the sidebar. Let's go back to that.
Oh, sorry, I made you break it.
All right. So over here, you have revisions. And you can step through revisions and go to old versions.
Oh, okay.
And then you have visibility. Visibility is one that's only going to be sort of used. Visibility is nice because you can make it public or private. Private says it's there, but no one can see it. Password protected is you can come up with a simple password. Now that's a nice way if you have gated content, where you can say to somebody, okay, shh, go check out this web page, but you have to use my special secret, super secret password of password. And then somebody has to, when they see the page, type in password to get access to that specific page. It's a poison pill when it comes to SEO, but it's a huge boon when it comes to making somebody feel special when they're coming to the site. And published, you can edit it from published, pending review, and draft, which are versions where it hangs outside the published state. This thing is kind of nice too, is that when you publish it, you choose when you call its practical published date. Like Google will still pick up on when it was really published, but this could allow you to time content to show off in the future. Like for example, if you had a page and you set these forward to a date and said okay, then you could hit, instead of update, schedule, and it sits there and it's in the queue and it's ready. And when your website gets to that date and something happens on the website which spawns it to go and check, it'll go, wait a sec, publishing said page, and makes it visible. And that's what happens there. So it's pretty handy in that it lets you set up and time content. And in one of my sites, we've got content coming out every Friday for like the next month. So I just did that all in one afternoon, and then for the next month it's walking its way out. So anyways, so we've done all that stuff. We're going to take from the back end here where it's all schematic and abstracted and look at it on the front end. The front end gives you a view as though it's published, but keeps all the editing functionality in place. Now, the reason why I didn't use it first is while it is really powerful,
It's resource intensive.
it's kind of resource intensive, and it can be a little fussy. And if it's fussy, it means you're not really sure what you're looking at. Like here, it's got all these regions, which is great. But before, if you have specific numbers, you can make those specific numbers absolutely work.
Where's your crab?
The crab, we're going to get to the crab.
Okay.
The crab's on my page.
There he is.
There's, so there it is.
His name is Tex.
So we're going to go in here and see. This is the thing I don't like about this editing experience is you have to kind of dial around and get the region, and you're like,
Well, you have to go off it and back on again to get out of that.
You can bolt the crab.
Editor.
yeah.
There.
So there. So you're back in. So the crab, don't worry everyone, the crab is going away
No.
But the crab will live another day.
Okay.
What we're going to do is we're going to go in the background, and our friend the crab is coming back. So everyone can just chill out and wait. It's happening. The crab is back. Oh, now we're going to have a parallax crab, which means as you scroll down the page, you get stuff moving around.
Like crabs?
Yeah, you get true crabs. True parallax. You say, okay. So now it's there.
I think you need to make that window taller.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. The back end. I always like the idea of keeping a back end and a front end, and the back end being that sort of more abstracted view. But
I usually work on the front end because it helps me visualize.
say we're going to turn that off. Now we're turned off parallax because parallax is kind of use up the space and it's a little finite. But you can use background cover or background settings if you don't have parallax, so you can decide whether or not you're going to have it cover and use the entire space. Where what it does is it says, I'm definitely making sure it goes edge to edge, top to bottom, and it doesn't. And if something gets cropped, it gets cropped, but it means everything's covered. Fit says we're going to fit it, which means that you may end up with some stuff not really showing, or everything's going to show, but you may end up with areas where the background image isn't entirely covering. Then actual size is something you declare a size and you have to live with it. And that one I never use because if you've got going up and down in viewport sizes, it's really tricky to be able to follow that along and make it work 100%. So I usually rely on cover. And then inside of here, we can declare where it sits. So an image will sit inside the space, and if you give it one of these rules, it will put the image relative to the space. So if you said true center, that says the center of the image is in the center of your background and everything else goes out from there. But maybe the most important piece of your image is the upper left. Or maybe it's center bottom because you can't miss that crab. And then down here you have background. And no repeat is the easiest one because it looks okay. But if you want to get wallpapering, cover and repeat doesn't work because it's covering, so it's 100% of the space, so you don't get a second one, so you don't repeat. But if you have it actual size or fill or fit, you can repeat and have it kind of wallpaper along. Which
you have like a small image and then you choose.
Crab.
Yeah, it would look ugly real bad, but if you have something nice and abstract, it could look really good.
I think you should make infinite crabs.
Crab tile. No, well the image is too big, right?
On your yoga page, you're going to have infinite crabs.
Okay.
Now, background blend,
She has a T page.
you can put in some style effects inside of here. So that way you could do saturation, so I could desaturate the image, and that's fun. That said,
The image blend, I think, is how it blends with the other content, right?
I think so. So I'm going to save the changes, and there are. So that took the crab and just put in a color effect and got something pretty funky because
Pretty cool now.
it's now working with that wonderful purple to green to purple effect. But you can end up with a really cool effect by saying mundane image, who cares gradient, and some styling, and then you end up with a really cool effect, right? So anyone who wants a pink crab, this is your chance.
That's going to advertise on my restaurant.
Your restaurant?
Yeah.
My restaurant.
I'm the one with the restaurant.
All right. So that's kind of the first page. Let's look at design a little bit. Inside of here, you can mess with the styling. Now, you could, in the first tab, when you're in the HTML view, set everything inside of the HTML code to be specific styles, and that's what that is. But the really nice, more holistic way is to go in here and use the text editor, the text styler. And here it lets you style the paragraphs, lets you style hyperlinks, lets you style lists, bulleted lists, and block quotes. So if you use those, you can come up with styling rules. So you could have one rule where maybe text is like 14 pixel text, but block quote is 24. So it pops out. And it's inside the same region, so if you call it one a paragraph and one a block quote, you end up with the two sets of stylings kicking in and then ends up nice, and it works well together. You can mess with the font size. I go, the default's going to be this bigger. Letter spacing, so you can have some breathing room. Now, this is always a fussy thing because anything more than a couple points, it starts to get really noticeable. Wide.
If you there's that little button on the top right, the third one in, and that resizes this window so you can kind of see more what you're doing.
Right. So you can do this that leaves more space, and then you can drag this around, and you can see what's going on. It says like, I want lots of breathing room. So yeah, so that's the thing. Cool tip. Line height, you can go, I want a lot of space between line breaks. And it also has the units of measure. You can see pixels, px for pixel, em for, I'm spacing on what em means, but em is another unit of measure. It's more relative. It's more of relative to the screen.
Isn't it the size of an M in that font size? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus the default.
Versus the default. Yeah, M dash font. You can also do a relative REM and mess with it that way. Line height just puts more space between the lines. Down in a text shadow. The text shadow, and then
You can make a white shadow.
you could make a white shadow, so the white shadow or the red shadow, or basically because of my color choices to date, all the shadows are going to look bad. But there. And you can have blur strength, so you can have it really solid. You have it more hazed and simple. Then text alignment, so I'm aligning the text over here. I'm centering my text. Color mode. Text color is one of those things that if you've done stuff up above, I don't know why they put it there.
Yeah.
It just goes the other way and says dark, which is your color is dark, like black on white. Light is white on black, so it really is kind of a useless thing. So you've got your body text. You can also mess with the heading text. So this is an H1, this is an H2, or this is H1, this is paragraph text. So I can go in here and I can say, I want this to be, well, what sort of font do we want? Oh, we need
that one, yeah.
we need that. We need it to be bolded. And again, you'll see a whole bunch of options here. In this case, all you get is regular and bold, because this font facing only has regular and bold available. So I've got some epic, this is text.
Looking cool.
Oh, yeah.
You can go all uppercase. You can say, nah. You can push it over here, center it.
I like how to teach us to make websites are making me really terrible.
Yeah, well, this is really it. Like, please do not take this as example of the work I kick out. So there, so you can, there. This is text. Let the world know. And then text shadow, purple. Now sizing outside of that is you can mess with the sizing of what's available.
The sizing of the module.
The sizing of the module space, not the text any longer. That one I don't use all that much because usually the text itself kind of dictates the rules. And if you set these in, it sometimes bites you, so I don't use it that much. Spacing is really cool. Now, I've been in web design now 24 years, and I'm sadly I don't know how recently it was that I got it straight in my head every time, margin versus padding. That's just my moment of truth. Margin, you have a box, and the margin is the spacing you add around the outside of the box. The padding is the spacing you add inside of the box. Now, inside of this, it doesn't matter all that much because you really can't see there's a border there, so padding on the outside or the inside doesn't do anything.
Well, if you put padding on the top.
If you put padding, yeah, but if you put margin or padding on the top, it will move it down. But if you put padding, but you can move it, if you put padding or margin on the top, like for example, if I added 10 pixels of top margin.
I think you gotta do more like the default is more than 10 pixels.
All right.
Oh, Lemon is now playing Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realm.
So there. So that would push. So that pushes 50 pixels of space above this epic box. But if I wanted to move the text that's inside the box in, I'd say 50 pixels on the inside, and that moves it down. Likewise, if I want to move all that in a little bit, I do that.
Put it on the crab.
What? Put what on the crab?
The text.
I can put the text on the crab. So I can put the padding on there, so I can do 100. Oh, right. I can even do a percentage, like 25%. and then that pushes it down 25% of the available width, which in of itself kind of gets a cycle because it's adding to the width. But that allows, so you use percentages and pixels, and you can mess with it, so it's not always a set number. You have some play in what these units are.
And you can do a percentage of the view size.
And you can use percentage of the view size, or you could do, for example, percentage of the screen height. It auto completes for you, which sometimes bites you. So you have to watch out when you're filling this in, because you start to go 25 and it thinks pixels, but now you want something else. It's like, you mean pixels? And it's like, no, don't. So watch out for that. Pixels. Do you mean pixels? So you can put a margin which goes outside of this colored box, or put padding which goes inside the borders and pushes the elements inside away from the borders. So that's the difference of margin and padding. Now, this is a tricky thing to do. Just as an example, another distinction is padding always adds to the amount of space. Margin can actually go into the negative. So while that's 50 pixels room, I could say, let's go the other way and make the top less. So you actually take the available space and you push it outside of that. It's dodgy to pull that off because it often bites you, so I don't do it that often. But if you need something to end up in a very special space on the page, you can do that. And then you can also have things kind of encroach upon each other or get very tight if that's something you needed to make the design work.
Who turned it into a stupid button?
Me.
And then you can put in border styles. Like here, it's a full box. Pardon me. And then you can put in border width. So I put in a 4-pixel border, called it red. Then you can do styles, which I've never seen anyone do anything other than solid, but you could do, ever since 1998. Double, ridged, that's really so epic. Inset, look at that, like really. We're now about to make the best yoga page crab theme thing ever. So it does an embossed inset edge.
Oh yeah.
And the only person you're going to entertain is somebody watching the how-to, because any client is going to storm off after punching
Crab
you.
yoga is the new goat yoga. They let crabs climb on you.
And then you've got a box shadow, so you can add shadow effects to have things stand out. A lot of people say, "Oh, that's so 90s." I use shadowing sparingly if I need to.
Use them subtle.
I use them to set something off, just so it gets the right spot on the page.
If you offset them too much, as I just discovered, they will completely fly away from
Yes.
And while you have an outer shadow, you can also have an inner shadow.
Wow.
Now on that Salish Weave example where I had to kind of make that photo effect, I had it so I had a border and a border, and the border was thick and white, and had another border going on and an inset shadow, and the end effect made it kind of look like it was a photograph. And that's a really nice, quick and dirty effect that turns a regular image into being specific styling, and if applied broadly enough, you could have all your images pick up that styling. You can do, this is back to the saturation, those filters on the front page. So here you could mess with the colors. So you go, very pink, very dark. But all the filters for that background are available, so you can mess with the brightness.
But in this part, it affects like everything in the border and everything.
It does affect everything in the region, so it goes a little too broad. But you can apply these filters. You can apply these filters, just tread carefully. Sepia, because of course you want sepia.
Sepia crab.
Ancient crab.
Remember the 1920s when crabs used yoga?
And we're pink.
Oh, and again, you can affect opacity here, so you can actually.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. I think everyone likes the idea that image is gone, but we're gonna put it back so no one.
Text is returned.
And you can have some choice on blur, so you can have it do that.
Oh, goodbye, text.
Now you could have a transitional effect, which is also kind of outside the scope of what we're talking about, where you could have it show off like that and then lose its blur and come into clarity, as though you're creating focus, and it looks like an animation and creates a bit of energy to what you're trying to show off.
Computer.
Oh no.
Transform allows you to mess with stuff, so you could skew things a little bit, so you could
Whoa.
do these effects.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you could actually sparingly get away with that doing something. Of course,
Ultimate skew. Ultimate skew.
Once you, yeah, ultimate skew. Ultimate skew. It's cool, but it may just hurt you. Origin, so you can transform stuff. You can warp things a little bit. I don't. Again, that's cute, but it's not all that awesome. And if you don't like what you did, you blank it. You blank it. You bought it. You can set it back so it's less terrifying. Same deal. And a little change is a big change. Like that's a 1 degree change, but you can see 1 degree definitely makes it look decidedly out of whack.
Animation.
Now animation is cool too, because by default, no animation. We can create a fade effect that says when you get to it, it shows off, slides in, the bounce. Bounce is a cool animation effect that animator friend of mine told me about. That when you're trying to make something appear on a page, you just for a briefest moment make it look bigger than the final size. So it goes small to bigger than real size, back to real size. And that creates that sort of bounce, almost like it's looking three-dimensional, almost like it's coming at you, without it really being a 3D effect. Zoom, flip, fold. See, all the good ones.
Classic.
And you can mess with the duration. And this one, again, tread carefully, because when I've done it, I've sometimes got a little too carried away with these.
Can you make it really long and really intense?
Well, these start spinning and never stop, and you're like, for the love of God, stop! And eventually you have to like scrap the whole box and start again.
Animation repeat forever.
Yeah, see, like you could loop.
Oh yeah.
And
Make it really fast.
yeah, loop and there. It takes a long time. Again, see, now no one's feeling love on that moment. And then advanced. Let's touch on advanced. Again, this is outside the scope, but this is talking about CSS. How earlier I said you get HTML tags like HTML and table and bold and all the other ones that you can affect the color and schemes on. There's 2 other ways you can affect and create styling. One of them is called an ID, where in best practice you only have one of a particular CSS ID on a page. So that means that you have a part of your page that has a specific ID, like it's called top header or new section or important text or section 1 or whatever the ID is. You nominate it, you give it a specific name. So you say, you call it Crabfest. Now, Crabfest should be the only ID on the page. So if you said make styling changes that mess with Crabfest, it's only going to affect the one thing that has Crabfest on the page. You can have multiple things with the same ID that lets you get away with that, but it's kind of bad form, so try not to do that. The other way is a class. It's similar to considered like a category, where you say everything that is, horrible gets a CSS class. And then everything that has a horrible CSS class, in the styling sheets, you can make them adopt particular rules.
Like visible.
Visible, like for example, do not display anything that's class horrible. Visibility is handy in that you can disable what it appears on. So it says, oh, well, this one, obviously, everyone on the phone needs to see this, but the desktop people, no, thank you.
Disable it on all browsers.
Okay, let me dive into this for a sec. Okay, so you saw that it's like that, and that's so awesome. We're going to sidebar that for a sec. Now, that's gray like that. But when you go over here, and this X kind of saves your bacon. The 3 dots, you click it open, and it has the save to save it in the front end. Some of the stuff we talked about earlier about portability, versioning, settings, that sort of stuff. But over here, it's really cool that you can emulate the viewport you're working in. So, for example, I said, oh, God, hide this on desktop, but the mobile people totally have to see it. So you click on that, and it shows the mobile view and simulates what it looks like. So anything made to hide on desktop and show on mobile, because you're emulating. Yeah, when you get to it, it'll show off. And then you go back to this view, and it'll show off your desktop view again. So it emulates those views and lets you in this front end, or what you see is what you get view.
Grayed out is not displaying in that.
Yeah, anything grayed out is still in the page, but not visible. Now, the good bad side of that is it's in the page not visible. When you're trying to build a page that is lean and mean, the elements that are not visible always show off, and they're always hiding in the source code, which means they're always adding to the bulk of the page, and your page is more complex and thereby less efficient to have it. So having the sections is sometimes, for mobile, desktop, and tablet, is sometimes, having those specific for each of those is a necessary evil, but it does make your page less effective. So it's slower, bulkier. Google may look at it a little bit prejudicially. So if it's the only way to achieve the look, you kind of have to do it. But if you can not do it, find a way to not do it, don't do it. And the way to not do it is you keep an element, and wherever possible, you come up with styling rules that apply well for each of the 3 viewports.
You could show how in the module that if you click on the little mobile in the module, then you can set styling specific to views within one module, right?
Yes. Wait a second. That one I haven't used all that much.
Okay, so like go into design and just pick a random one, like.
Right.
And then if you hover like next to any of the titles, you'll see the thing come up that shows. Yeah,
right.
So.
So this.
On the little mobile there.
So this,
not
yeah.
That one, the one next to it.
Yeah. So you click on this, and this gives you variants for desktop. So by default, you're doing it for everything. But you can come up with the variants that are specific to the tablet view and specific to the phone view. So those rules only kick in for those. So the element...
You could use different fonts on all the different sizes.
Yeah. So the elements are the same. The HTML is the same, but the styling and the rules are specific. So that gives you that chance to vary it up without choosing to show, hide, and replicate things.
Text is gone.
Where's our crab
I
friend?
use that quite a lot.
Yeah, so that's a handy way. Good catch, Aaron. Handy way to show it off. And then while it's doing this, it's also showing you a preview, so it shortcuts that piece. And then let's go back to advanced and close this out here. So transitions, yeah, we did.
Transitions is more for slides, I think.
Yeah, right. So we had the visibility piece and overflow. Horizontal overflow and vertical overflow, it's what happens when you run out of space in a region. By default, the region just gets bigger to accommodate it. Visible sometimes will show it at all costs. Scroll will say you're going to scroll it, which says if you run out of space, it's going to create a little scroll bar inside the area, which is kind of a little super cheesy. Try to never do it. But sometimes it may be your only workaround, or may actually serve it for some reason. There may be a compelling reason, but it's uncommon. And then hidden says that when you run out of space, like say you want this 100 pixels tall, anything that won't fit in the 100 pixels will just be hidden. And auto says make your best decision, which usually is the same as default. Vertical, same rule. So vertical and horizontal overflow behave the same way. Transition is about how that transitional stuff comes when you scroll up and down the page. Positioning is something kind of cool. If you want layers and stuff to have an absolute position, you can you can position it on the page. So that means that you can have it by default, which just fits in with the other blocks of content you've built. Relative says that it'll fit relative to something else, but then be offset by an amount you declare if you want it to move over so many pixels or down so many pixels. Absolute says it's going to appear somewhere on the page. What it does is it shows off something relative to the page, but relative to the viewport. So if you look at the top bar right now, that black top bar for the WordPress admin section, that's an example of a fixed element. As you scroll around, it stays static. That's nice if you have a feature you want to keep somewhere present on the page and you want it to just not go away. So let's snap back to what it looks like here in the wireframe view. And you can see the desktop view. You can zoom in to see what it looks like, or this is more a zoom out so you can get kind of the big picture view of what it looks like. And then you go back. Now, don't touch this one. If you've done your work, load from library will load in a style on top of what you've got, so that's something you don't want. So just get out of there. And then we've got clear layout. Again, you don't want the X in the center is nice because it zooms everything down so you can see your space, zooms it back out. Settings, we'll get back to versioning. Portability is great because what you could do here is you can export the layout you've built and actually move it to another page, another site, store it for later. And this can be saved to your desktop and then shared out. It creates a JSON file, which is a nice format to compress stuff. And it's readable by Divi on the far side of this, so you can take that export and import it somewhere else. Let me just get rid of that. Likewise, the same portability spot you import where you select the file. You can at this time check off whether or not you want it to download a copy of what you've got before you overwrite it. If you did that, it's very important. I usually, if you're going to do this, an import, you start with something blank, something you want to wipe out. You can also apply the rules that come in for the whole site. Like, for example, these could be the rules that set the tone for the rest of your stuff. So that feels like it's going to go too far, so it's something I wouldn't do. Let's just get out of there. Page settings. Now, a lot of metadata, page title, excerpt, featured image, that sort of stuff is editable inside of Divi. There's other stuff that comes in from third-party plugins like Yoast or other things that will pack on that you can't see in the front-end view, but you can see in the back end. So, for example, I want to change the title, Crab Yoga. And then if I want to put in a featured image, I could. If I want to set the overall background, I could. Featured image is nice when you see previews like in a blog scroll or something. Background is just set the background. Split testing is really handy. That shows off. Now the bounce limit is about how many seconds do you consider it to be okay for somebody to be on the page before they bail. For example, if you say that it's 20 seconds, you say, well, they're humming and hawing for 20 seconds, they go. Not the case. Usually it's something like 5 seconds or less if somebody gets there and goes, oh, I don't want to be here, and backs out. So you want to factor out those bounces when you do split testing, decide what is and is not a successful design. You can affect the color palette and change up those colors so you can use your favorite colors. You can do stuff about the gutters, on the borders between the segments. Inside of the text edit, you'll see light and dark. You can define what the color of light and the color of dark count as. In advanced, you can add in custom CSS that applies only to this page, which is kind of nice. Visibility and position, those things can be affected on kind of on page-wide scale. So going back into the back end, there's some stuff in here. The bottom I was mentioning about Yoast, which we use for search engine optimization. That's available in the back end, not the front end. What else is going on? You've got a comment, so you can leave developer comments, so you can say something like this is a good edit or a bad edit or whatever. Down here, Yoast, you can do all the specific stuff with Yoast. Look, I'm going to leave a little comment here. Well, am I? Maybe I will. There we go. That's for the next developer. Leave that. There'll be a whole nother video I'll do on Yoast and what you're supposed to do with Yoast ideally to make this work ideally. I'm using the word ideally a lot. So that's what our video is all about. I'm Shawn DeWolfe from Web321, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comment here, or you can email me, Shawn at web321.co. Thanks, and have a really good day.